In Beyond Baker Street, you each play as characters from Sherlock Holmes's books, working together to solve crimes by finding the right evidence. You have 3 leads you have to chase down: a suspect, their motive, and their opportunity. To confirm a lead, you have to have collected the right evidence. For example, to nail Dr. Grimsby Roylott, we have to get exactly 11 in witness statements, or blue cards. To find and play the blue cards that add up to 11, we have to work together, because none of us can see the cards in our own hands. Everyone holds their cards away from them, so that everyone else can see them. You have no idea which cards to play until your teammates tell you about your cards. Except free communication isn't allowed. The only way to tell people what they have in their hand is to spend your action giving them one piece of information. For example, that they have 2 blue cards in hand, or that they have 1 4 card, showing them which one. It means you have to have your wits about you. You have to remember what you've been told about your cards, because if you forget, you could bring the whole case down. And you have to create a plan in your head and hope that your teammates are thinking the same thing. Beyond Baker Street is truly a cooperative game where everyone has to be involved and on the same page. It's stressful. There's a lot of pressure not to be the clumsy, forgetful detective who lets the side down. But that's what makes it such a great game. It gives a weight of importance to every action you make. And there's a time limit. If you spend too many turns telling each other about your cards, Sherlock will have solved the case before you and you lose the game. You have to act fast. The game is heavily inspired by a popular card game called Hanabi. They've taken the basic premise of not looking at your cards and expanded upon it. Here you each have a character card which either gives you a special power or a weakness. Inspector Jones can't identify footprint evidence in other players' hands. This means that every time you play you'll have a different group dynamic and adds a little more to the puzzle. In Hanabi you have to play cards down in order. In Beyond Baker Street, the cards you play have to add up to the target number. If a suspect requires 11 points, you could play a 5 and a 6, or you could play the 5, 3, 2 and 1. There's only 1 card of each number, 1 to 6, in each colour, so you need to be careful with your maths. It means there's a little more to be aware of than with Hanabi. If someone discards the vital number that you need, it's a bigger loss. But there are ways round it. Where it improves on Hanabi is in its theme. It's so much easier to bring new players in, have them understanding what's going on when you can explain the story. Giving them a character, telling them that they're trying to solve a case together. It gets people engaged and means they pick up the rules quicker. My favourite improvement is that you either win or lose. In Hanabi you end up with a score which tells you how well you did. It's unsatisfying. In Beyond Baker Street you have a case to solve, and you either do it in time or you don't. It means there's a greater tension to the game, and it always ends in a climax, a hard-won victory or a heartbreaking defeat. And the game has different levels of difficulty to tackle. Once your group has cracked the first case, you can give yourself a bigger challenge. Some players will struggle with not being allowed to communicate and will accidentally cheat. Other players will find the pressure of remembering cards too stressful, but I really enjoy Beyond Baker Street. It improves on a game that I already enjoyed, bringing a more fitting theme and more variety. I'm keeping Hanabi for its sheer portability, but at all other times I'll be opting for Beyond Baker Street. It's a keeper for me. Hive Mind is a party game of thinking alike. One player reads out a question, for example, 3 things that are big and white. Everyone has 2 minutes to come up with 3 answers. Then you take it in turns to read out your answers, hoping that you've been thinking along the same lines as everyone else. You get points for how many other players wrote the same answer as you, so if I wrote whale and 5 other people wrote whale, we all get 5 points. I might be convinced that my answer, moon, is the biggest, whitest thing anyone could possibly think of, but if no one else wrote it down, I'm left with nothing except a feeling of injustice. And that's the beauty of the game. You'll all be cursing each other for not writing down what was so obvious in your head, and rejoicing when you hit the jackpot and match with everyone else. There's 4 classic responses to a Hive Mind answer. 1, yes, I wrote that. 2, oh yeah, that's good. Which is when everyone recognises your answer as being perfect, but no one actually wrote it. 3, I wrote that, but I crossed it out and wrote something else. Said by people who are no longer your friends. And 4, deathly silence, as you realise these people don't get you and your take on what's big and white at all. Hive Mind is great for sparking conversation, as players laugh at each other's answers, explain why they wrote something and discuss the merits of one word over another. The rules state that there is no wrong answer. This isn't a trivia game, but players will still instinctively question people's answers, especially if they weren't thinking with the hive mind that round. For example, we had a round where the question was, 3 things you take your shoes off for. I was left out in the cold as the entire table wrote, getting into the shower and getting into bed. What? You don't take your shoes off to get into the shower, you take your socks off to get into the shower. Your shoes are already off. You take your shoes off when you enter the house, and yet no one wrote that. This is the fun of Hive Mind. Sometimes the most obvious answer isn't the way to get points. You have to think like your friends, your stupid friends. The elation of matching an answer feels good for a reason. For a moment, you're less of a pathetic outcast in this world. The questions are really well written, and there's loads of potential for funny answers, and there's loads of questions. It's all family friendly, but some can lead towards adult responses if your group wants to take it in that direction. Everyone adds up their points for that round, and the player with the least moves down the hive. If a player ever leaves the hive, the game is over and they lose. Everyone else wins. The person who couldn't think like the others is kicked out of the beehive. It's a cute idea, but it feels a little too mean and demoralizing for such a light party game. And with the hive system, the game can last a little too long, but don't let that put you off. Just play as many rounds as you like, and the players at the end who are lowest in the hive are the losers. Really, anyone who plays this game to win and not for the silly fun are the losers. My only issue with Hive Mind is that it's overproduced. It comes in a big box with branded pencils, a full board, and bee-meeples, or beeples. There's a pointless track which tells you how many players move down the hive this round. It could just be achieved with a die. I feel like the board, even the hive, loses sight of what makes this game great. Hive Mind could just be a box of questions and you would have exactly the same amount of fun. Hive Mind is a welcome addition to my party game collection. It's so simple that it can be played by anyone, and that makes it a perfect game to play with family at Christmas. And it works with absolutely any player count, making it one of the most versatile party games ever. It inspires conversation, laughter, and gives you a glimpse into how your friends' minds work. I highly recommend Hive Mind. Hitsi Road is a game about travelling across America during a zombie apocalypse, trying to keep your group of survivors alive the longest. The premise of the game is unique. Hitsi Road isn't any old board game, it's a homemade board game made by a teenage boy during a zombie apocalypse. He's upcycled an old board games box, stuck photos and stickers on decks of playing cards, and used bottle caps for tokens. And it's eye-catching. The artists have done a brilliant job of giving a distressed look to everything. It's unusual and charming. It's something I never would have thought of. And as such, it's also something I'm not sure I need. If I'm playing a game about the zombie apocalypse, I want to be immersed in the zombie apocalypse. There's a whole level above that here, where instead I'm being immersed in a child's game about the zombie apocalypse. Every round there are 4 routes represented by 2 cards that show areas you'll be driving through. Most places will give you some combination of gas, guns or adrenaline. Some will have you fighting zombies. As such, some routes are much better than others. So to decide who takes which route, there's an auction, where you bid away your precious resources. The auction is crucial. It's the only point of player interaction in the game, and it can be the difference between life and death. It's a nice challenge to decide the value of the route choice, but I found with new players, in the early game there's a tendency to bid too much, meaning that no one has enough resources to survive until the end of the game. It's brutal too. If you bid 6 and then everyone else outbids you, you're paying 6 resources for nothing. I prefer my light games to be more immediately intuitive to newcomers. Since the auction is the only way to avoid the worst routes, if you screw up and overspend early on, there's no way back. Each round you won't have enough resources to outbid your opponents, so you'll always get last pick. And as the game ramps up towards the end, you'll be facing worse and worse routes, weakening you further, meaning the poor only get poorer. This isn't a game with comebacks. And the auction, the critical aspect of the game, doesn't fit the theme. Why do we have to take different routes? And assuming that we do, why would we then have to auction to decide who gets first pick? And then why does the auction result in us paying energy drinks, guns and gas? Not to each other, but to the bank. The game definitely does hammer home the scarcity of resources. You never have enough, and that feeling is thematic. There's a constant agony in trying to decide between spending them on the auction to avoid trouble, or saving them for the inevitable zombie attacks. Whatever you do, it's always the wrong decision. You can spend 2 gas tokens to avoid a fight altogether. Bullets are for making a safe ranged attack before the zombies arrive. Hopefully you can wipe them out before they do any damage. Once they're attacking you, adrenaline is vital for keeping you alive every time you roll one of these symbols. You keep rolling until one side dies, and there's plenty of luck. I've seen swathes of zombies be killed by 2 survivors, and I've seen 4 survivors be wiped out in one fight. I don't mind the luck, it brings an excitement, it captures the desperation of survival, that you could die any minute. But it does mean some players will be eliminated from the game. Yes, Hitsi Road features player elimination, and it's a common occurrence. In fact, I've found you're far more likely to get knocked out than make it to the end of the game. I wouldn't have it any other way. The zombie apocalypse is all about survival, and it means you're fully invested in the survival of your characters. It's just that the game is so brutal that players can die quite early on and be waiting around for quite a while. It is fun. Did I mention that? Desperately clinging on for dear life is exactly what you want from a zombie game, and the aesthetic of this game is top notch. But I won't be hanging on to Hitsi Road. The auction stops me from getting immersed in its theme, and it's too punishing an experience to use to recruit newcomers to board games. I like the desperation it evokes, but if I want to feel like I'm in a zombie apocalypse, I'll play Dead of Winter or Zombicide Black Plague instead. Double Feature is a party game about movies. The game gives you 2 criteria. For example, a film with a title that is 1 word long and has a hippie, yuppie or a zombie for a character. The first person that shouts out an answer, say Zombieland, gets the point. Crucially, it's not a trivia game. You don't have to have an encyclopedic film knowledge, you just have to remember the films that you've seen. This keeps the playing field level because everyone should be able to name an action-adventure film that features a hat, mask or helmet. I'll give you a few seconds. Who said Indiana Jones? And that's the best thing about this game, it's accessible. It doesn't make you feel like an idiot when you're playing it. If you play with a massive film buff, they're probably still going to do well, but the game's just as much about being quick on the draw. The game has 6 categories: theme and genre, production, props, characters, scenes and settings. Each round is a combination of 2 of those, so there's plenty of replayability. They've got difficulty just right. For most rounds, you're going to get a few obvious answers, and the challenge is just thinking of one first. But if the whole table struggle to find an answer, you just flip over a 3rd category and find a film that uses any pair of cards. That soon fixes the problem. When someone wins a round, they take the oldest card as a point. The other card joins up with a new one, which is nice because it means if you've been racking your brain for coming-of-age films, you might have one in your head ready for when that card gets paired up with a vehicle with unexpected features. The answer being Herbie Goes on His Gap Year. If no one has heard of your film and calls you a cheat, you're allowed to prove them all wrong on IMDb. The artwork in the game is really cute. My only real criticism is that the box is far too big for the number of cards. Double Feature is not a party game that's going to blow anyone's minds, but it's a great game for movie lovers and a fun alternative to a trivia game that won't leave anyone frustrated. I really enjoyed it, and it's staying in my collection. Eternity is a light card game about trying to achieve perfect harmony. It's a trick-taking game, which means that players all get a hand of cards, and each trick they play 1 card. The first player's card sets the suit for that trick, and everyone else has to follow suit, unless they can't, in which case they play another card. The person who played the highest card wins that trick, and plays a card for the next trick. However, there's also a trump suit. If you play a card from that, it trumps the original suit, and you can win the trick that way. If you played the classic card games Hearts or Whist, it's along those lines. But Eternity makes a few twists to the basic trick-taking format. The goal of the game is to achieve perfect harmony. When you win a trick, it represents a peninsula. But as we all know, a peninsula is nothing without a tree upon it. Instead of playing a card into a trick for a round, you can play your card sideways, pledging it. If you do that, you get the tree tokens indicated on the card. At the end of the round, you want to have exactly the same number of trees as peninsulas. If you do, you get the harmony bonus. If you were greedy and got so many trees you can't plant them, you score no points whatsoever. This is the challenge of the game, to find that balance, and I really like it. You can push your luck and get loads of trees, hoping you'll win enough tricks to cover them, or play it safe and achieve harmony with 1 tree. Whatever your approach, it's a nice feeling when you pull it off. You look at your hand at the start of the round and you have to decide how many tricks you think you can win with it. I like that internal bet you make with yourself. The trump suit can change in the game. It's determined at the start of a round by the cards that are not dealt to the players. If there's more cards in the blue column than in the other columns, blue is the trump suit. But every time you pledge a card, that card goes into its matching column, possibly changing the trump suit. This allows you to strategize changing the trump suit at the right time, so that you can easily win tricks later on with the cards you have. One aspect I found disappointing is that the 3 rounds of the game are completely self-contained. The cards are all re-dealt as well as the trump suit. You're not able to play a long-term strategy over the 3 rounds, and yet with each round the harmony bonus increases. If you get the same number of trees as peninsulas in the 3rd round, you get 7 bonus points. But if you do that in the 1st round, you only get 2 bonus points. And yet nothing about the rounds are different. There is no way to plan towards that 3rd round. And those 7 points are big. It does rather overshadow any success you had earlier in the previous rounds. However, there is a variant in the rulebook which makes the harmony bonus 3 in every round. Eternity is a really simple light card game. The artwork is striking, but is a little too new age for me. It wouldn't be out of place in an advert for crystal healing. I've enjoyed playing this game. As a rule, I'm not overly fascinated by trick-taking games, but that challenge of trying to achieve harmony had me invested in the game in the way that I wasn't with, say, diamonds. Snowtails is a game of racing husky dogs through the snow, dodging ravines and trees and trying to get to the finish line first. You each have a sled and 2 husky dogs. The dogs have numbers above them showing how fast they're running. You also have a brake at the back of your sled. Every turn you add up both your dog's speed, then minus the brake. That's how many spaces you move this turn. 3 plus 3 equals 6, minus 2, I'm moving 4 spaces in a straight line. If one of your dogs is moving faster than the other, you'll have to veer in that direction. In this scenario, I'm moving 4 spaces, but 2 of them have to be forward to the right. On your turn, you have to play at least 1 numbered card from your hand of 5, either onto a dog or onto the brake. You can play more than 1 card, but only if they're all the same value. It's a very simple and clever system, which means you're having to work with what your hand offers you. Last turn, you played that 4 on the right dog, and now you've not got the cards you need to veer left for the next corner. It's tempting to blaze through the course at full speed, but if you speed too fast into a corner, you take dent cards which clog up your hand, massively decreasing your options later on. The same happens if you crash into the side. Trying to ride that balance and pushing your luck is exciting, but it often feels like the decisions are a little limited. Based on where you are on the track, there might be only 1, maybe 2 choices for that turn. Everything else is a suicidal path into the side of the track. For me, a race game needs to have a fast pace to it. Turns need to run quickly to see real progress on the course. I've seen Snowtails go really slowly when players struggle with the maths, and because the dents are such a hindrance, some players can overthink their turn, trying 1 card, doing the maths, moving their piece on the board to see where that takes them, then moving it back, trying another card in another slot, doing the maths, moving the piece again. The system isn't intuitive for everyone, and I've seen players struggle to plan their next turn in their head during other players' turns. If you play with people who are more willing to enter into the spirit of a frantic race, where you're thinking on your feet and occasionally making mistakes but living with them, then there is a fun game here. It's just not guaranteed. If you get behind in Snowtails, it's almost impossible to catch up. The player in the lead in the first third of the game is the player that's going to win the game. It's a race, so it makes perfect sense thematically. It's just not that much fun for the player who gets caught behind early on. There is one small catch-up mechanism. If your sled is balanced, you get a movement bonus equal to your position in the race, but too often these bonuses are only available when using them would obliterate your sled on a corner. Snowtails comes with a whole bunch of different track tiles and loads of suggested racetracks. I especially like the saplings. They present an interesting choice. Do you slow down and carefully maneuver through them, or speed up and plow one down, taking a dent in the process, but still being allowed to finish your movement afterwards? Snowtails has got some cool ideas, and the rules are very easy to grasp, but the maths is a turn-off for some people, and it can bog down with analysis paralysis. Add some dated box art, and it's not quite the perfect gateway racing game I was hoping for. I've had some fun games of it, but it doesn't have enough exciting moments to outweigh its downsides. If you'd like to buy any of the games covered in this video, you can help support Actualol by using the links in the description below. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. And if you want to hear about the games that I've been playing, follow Actualol on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. I'm Jon Purkis, thanks for watching.